Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to ESTA Live, powered by the Education Committee. The mission of the Esports Trade Association is to unify, serve, and ethically advance the business interests and sustainability of the esports industry. Each month, we'll be discussing educational esports topics with that mission in mind. This month, we'll be discussing parental involvement in esports. This one is something that's near and dear to my heart as both a parent and a member of the ESTA. Today, I'm honored to be joined by these illustrious speakers, Jennifer Hannon, Freddie Halstead, and Shay Williams. Freddie is the owner of the Techie Factory. Jennifer is a mother of four, including a pro COD player. Today, she runs a coffee company called Regain, who is the sponsor of the ESTA Coffee Connections and something I am a personal fan of, and now has recently joined Aftershock Media as a partnerships manager. And finally, we have Shay, who is known to the gamers as Shaymon, which is a play off both Shaman and Pokemon, which I probably don't need to explain to everybody, but I did need to explain to me. So just to be clear. But now maybe it goes by Shaymom. Because she is the co-founder as of 2020 of the Coalition of Parents in Esports, and also the parent of another pro esport player. So thank you all three for joining me. Jennifer, I just want to kick it over to you really quickly, just to tell me how you got involved in esports and how that led you to ESTA.
Well, my son obviously is a pro esports player now, but he's been playing video games since he's been 4 or 5, and always had a controller in his hand. He started traveling when he was 15 to play gaming. And we just traveled with him back and forth. He came up from the basement when he was 15. He said to us, he's like, "Hey, this guy wants to fly me somewhere." We're like, "Hold up, let's
Wait a
just
minute.
yeah, wait a minute. I don't know about that." So, but he's always had a passion for video gaming. I mean, ever since he's little, like I said, ever since 4 or 5, he's always had, a controller in his hand. If we would have let him, he would have never left the basement. So he did play sports in high school. I mean, since he was 8, he played baseball. Then he went to lacrosse. But he always knew that after high school, he's like, I'm just gonna game. Like that was always his forever, ever. He told us. It was just that was his passion. Like he was like, I'm gonna make this work. That's what he always said to us.
And how did that lead you to join ESTA?
Well, actually, obviously, I've been with esports with him for several years. Went to a lot of events, did all that stuff, and I got a job in got a job in esports, and then getting more involved in conferences and stuff. And then obviously, I went to the Chicago conference with the STA and got to know a lot of the people there, and just wanted to be more involved.
I think that image of esports players being in the basement is something that we hear a lot of, but it's really interesting to hear from a parent of a traditional sport player who has picked esports as their future. And that's something we'll definitely start talking about. Freddie, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and how you got into esports and how that's led you to be part of ESTA too.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be happy to. And by the way, I'm not driving. I'm actually parked, so don't worry about my safety. So I bought a company called Techie Factory 4 years ago, and we do coding and digital creation and tech. And we realized early on that esports was the future of our business, that just like everything else over the past 100 years, it trickles down. And so there are professionals that do it, and then it moves down to college and then high school and then younger kids. And so I was really excited in particular about this topic because I'm very passionate about it with an 8-year-old and as a former public school teacher. I'm very passionate about this topic and look forward to chatting about it.
Yeah, Freddie, my kids will be attending a Techie Factory event this summer. So I obviously am vested in you being successful because it is a great organization. Love to hear more about it. And I'd like to invite anyone who is watching this online to go ahead and drop any questions or comments down in the chat. Tell us where you're from. You're welcome to interact with one another. Love to keep this as interactive and collaborative as possible. And last but certainly not least, Shaymom or Shaymon, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into esports and how that's led you to ESTA.
Well, my kids grew up in a techie household because I actually got a computer science degree because of my own love of video games. But I never really thought about the competitive side. It was just what sparked my interest in technology. So when my kids were growing up, they grew up playing Roblox and Minecraft. And, we soon realized that my son was incredibly brilliant at video games. His problem solving skills from such a young age were amazing. But he found the competitive side through Fortnite when it came out. And I didn't even realize what he was doing. I had no idea. He was in his room gaming. He had hit the age now where I'd let him move the computer to his bedroom. But he had started a Discord server. He had started streaming on Twitch, and he was doing all this stuff at the age of 14. And he had teammates and he was practicing. And when I finally started paying attention to what he was doing, I was completely blown away by the leadership skills I was seeing him, have, and just what he was building here and how happy he was. And, just like Jennifer's son, he played sports. And he was on a traveling soccer team. Both of my kids were actually competitive figure skaters. I mean, he was super fit, but he also loved this. I realized that this was where he was finding his people. These were the people he connected to. And this was what was inspiring him.
Those are all amazing points. I love some of the things you said, like problem solving, competitive leadership. Those are traits that we associate with development in traditional sports, and is why extracurricular activities exist, because we don't necessarily get to teach those skills in a basic classroom. And Freddie, you as a public school teacher probably know as well as anybody that there are skills outside of what you might learn in a classroom that can be super effective for growing students. Techie Factory is something that I think is part of that evolution of teaching, going outside of the school and teaching skills that are going to be part of the future. Can you tell us a little bit more about what Techie Factory does and how it might be similar to other types of after-school education programs?
Sure. I often think back to, so I taught from 2000 to 2014 in Dallas ISD, and I often think back to kind of seeing this generational shift firsthand, where early on in my career, I could go to a middle school kid and say, hey, it's really important. You need to get your grades up so you can act or sing or play the sport or whatever. And it would work, and they'd work harder, and they'd go into tutoring and get it done. And then there was this shift kind of midway through where I'd go and I'd have that exact conversation, and it would be, that's all right. But you've been working so hard at whatever your after school activity is. Yeah, I can just play video games with my friends. And it really struck a chord with me. And it's one of the reasons we bought Techie Factory with the hope of franchising. And yeah, we want to bring this to kids all over the country. I mean, we do a lot of what we do now is Roblox and entrepreneurship and kids learning Lua. We have an art and animation lab that deals with NFTs, and we give a little brief explanation of the blockchain and talk about that. It's real world tech stuff that is very kid friendly and provided in a really fun way. And so that's what we do. And we do it here in Dallas with our one franchisee, and very soon we'll have locations all over the country. And then, we're fortunate enough to be successful and can offer a lot of this nonprofit as well. And we're working with several professional esports orgs to bring camps to Dallas for kids that can't afford it. And it's just really exciting.
Yeah, those are a lot of great points. I think a lot of the barrier to entry for this industry or esports in general is just the cost of having a good system to play many of these games on. But there are a lot of mobile games. There are organizations like yours. There are schools that are starting to provide these types of things for the students, just like they provide the soccer balls and the baseballs and places for people to play. This is something new that will be the future of where people play. Jennifer, this question is for you. You had a child who was a competitive traditional sports player who then decided to become one of the best COD players in the world. When did you recognize that, and how did you encourage that? Or what mindset did you have when you heard that they were focusing on this, which was not a traditional sport?
It was when he started playing and I went, obviously the first LAN events are, LAN events are huge, and it's no different than any other sporting event. But when you go to that first event, and you see how real it is, when he was 15, and you see how real it is and the competition. It's no different than going and cheering at a football game, or, you know what I mean? Like, you truly feel the environment, and then, and it's the excitement that it's, you get into it, like you start, I mean, you've probably seen me on screens, like I'm screaming and cheering, and, you know what I mean? I'm all into it, like I was, at other sporting events. And it's really, I think a lot of people, you hear your kids yelling from the basement or from their room, and that's all you hear. And you're like, be quiet, or it's midnight or 2 a.m. or whatever it may be. And that's all you hear. And I think a lot of parents don't understand, like, the enjoyment that they get, or the fulfillment, or, when they win, like what I mean, it's like when they win tournaments online or something, it's no different than winning a game for them. And parents, if they see what that, and they understand a little bit more, I think that the connection with their kid, because right now the connection sometimes with the kids is they just bury themselves in their room, and then the parents are just mad, hey, they're just playing, and you know what I mean, so the connection's a little bit distant, right? So, but with them and playing video games, I mean, there's so much more than just playing the video game. Obviously I have a pro, but I also have a younger son that plays, and he has it for a different reason. Like, he does it because he doesn't play sports, but he does it for the friends, right? So he doesn't have a lot of friends at school. So he comes home to play Minecraft or get on Discord. And those friends are his friends. They don't judge him. They don't do anything. Those are the friends that he has, that, that he truly can get on and just play and just have a good time with. And gaming also is about strategy. It's about team building. It's about relationship skills. I mean, these guys and pros, obviously all the way down, they argue, one kill didn't happen or whatever, and they get mad, but they learn coping skills, right? They learn how to do those things. And in school, sometimes you don't even have those skills, right? Because, they make sure nobody's arguing, they make sure nobody, you know what I mean? And so those kind of skills you are learning in video game strategies, and all kinds of different skills that people want to say that, they aren't learning. They are learning a lot of practical skills.
That is, wow. I love that point about allowing conflict, to show conflict resolution. So much of what we're taught as parents and as educators, you may be able to back this up, Freddie, is that conflict avoidance is the name of the game. You never want to put yourself into a position where you have conflict, but unfortunately that's going to happen in your life. And as my young girls know, you'll have to learn to deal with that, and they'll experience people who are incredibly toxic at it. And hopefully they'll be experiencing people who are very good at it and taking those lessons away. You use the word coping, which I think is a fantastic segue to bring in Shay to talk about cope. Can you just describe cope and what led you to co-found it back in 2020?
So what led me to co-found it was watching my son here. When I watched him and saw what he was learning, I decided, okay, this is really great. He wants to focus on this. I'm going to jump in and help him. And I went online thinking I would find groups to support me and how to do things and coaches. And there was nothing. There was nothing to tell me how to do this. I jumped on Twitter with him and Discord because I realized that's where the gamers were. And at first, I was kind of watching this whole environment of on Twitter of all these gamers communicating with each other and everything. And yes, you could view it as toxic. In some parts, it is. I described it as Lord of the Flies when I first got there. But I was also just blown away by the connections that were being made. I was watching my son hire people who lived in different countries to do his overlays and his videos. I was watching him connect and find, his partners and find his coaches for gameplay. And I thought, okay, this is great. I'm going to jump in here and figure this out. But most of my best information was coming from other parents that I found. It was coming from pro parents that I found on Twitter or that I ran into and met at LAN events. And they became my support network. But I realized, nobody was out there telling other parents what we were seeing. We were on the inside. We were seeing the positive benefits of this, whether you were a pro player or a casual player. But most of the media was very negative on gaming. So it started out of a frustration that people were not being told the real value of gaming, that message wasn't getting to parents. And also of just wanting to be that resource hub. We are a nonprofit. We're really about finding great companies like Freddie's Techie Factory and helping parents connect to those, no matter where they are. We're worldwide. We've got a really cool group of parents from competitive across all games. And it's about creating that community and that education hub for parents so they can support their kids here.
Community is such a critical word to any industry, really, but one that is based on online and as global as gaming seems to be one that community is the most important thing. We talk about our event in August of last year, where we met many of you, the Esports Next event. That is a lot of the impetus for a lot of us joining ESTA, was seeing the community that developed at that event and seeing how many people were as interested as we are in gaming at a level that I was very surprised at the level of people who were interested in gaming. These were companies and people that I never thought would have been interested in esports. And yet here they are talking about it as if it is the future. I make the comparison a lot to the WWF in the 1980s, where it feels like we're on the cusp of this thing that it's a phenomena, but only the people who are interested in the phenomena are getting it so far. One thing you also mentioned, all three of you have mentioned, is entrepreneurship. And this is something that I'd love to get each of your take on it. Freddie, clearly you're teaching it. Jennifer and Shay, your young people actually learned it themselves a little bit more on that. But tell me how you feel esports specifically helped encourage your child to be an entrepreneur. Jennifer, we can start with you, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Shay. You can go first. I'll let Shay go first.
I find this community really, really amazing because we're talking about Gen Z and we're talking about Gen Alpha. I mean, Gen Alpha, the first generation of them are in middle school right now. They're going to be entering high school soon, so they're here. I mean, these are the Web3 kids that are already here. And what I see in them is just a natural entrepreneurial nature. And they are all about learning stuff and doing it for themselves. And it's really brought up, especially with COVID, it's brought it this idea that not all kids learn the same way. And, and that makes it so difficult, but it's really getting to them and, teaching them where they are. And that's what I find so amazing about gaming, whether we're talking about these online communities of casual or pro gamers, or we're talking about scholastic esports. When Chris and I, my co-founder for COPE, first jumped into this, we were coming from the pro side. We knew nothing about scholastic esports. And the first thing we did was jumped in to learn as much as we could. Luckily, we found Bubba and a few people that introduced us to people and educated us very quickly. But that was the thing that was most exciting to me. Forming COPE was finding out how many incredible people were on the scholastic side building this up in schools. Because one of my big mantras is esports is never going to be recognized like football or basketball until the parents have been shown the value. And we haven't done that yet. And that is also not going to happen until it's part of scholastic programs. It has to be in the schools as part of education, and it needs to be. We know that kids learn better with gamified education, and we know kids do better that have these extracurricular activities.
Yeah. Freddie, then let's kick it over to you. When you talk about entrepreneurship and esports, you talked about things that parents might not be aware of, that Roblox is a user content generated game or something like that. Can you talk a little bit about how learning how to play games could possibly turn my kid into an entrepreneur later in life?
Well, and this is one of my favorite things about what we're doing now. And there are a lot of different companies out there that will help your kids learn to code, regardless of the fact that by the time they're adults, it'll all be AI anyway. But that's neither here nor there. What we're teaching is some of these other skills that are really important. And so Roblox is the perfect example of, we have a 12-year-old kid who comes and he learns Lua and he learns how to build games on the Roblox platform or experiences. And he thinks when he gets there at the beginning of this school year that he's going to learn to make a game, he's going to publish it, and he's going to be a millionaire. Well, that's not reality. That is probably not going to happen. But we don't tell him that. We tell him it's highly unlikely. And we tell him, okay, so you've learned Lua, you've learned this new language, you've learned how to navigate the Roblox platform. Why don't you go to the toy store below this Techie factory and pitch them on, I would like to create your toy store in the metaverse, in Roblox, and you will pay me, obviously, and we can either make it an e-commerce platform, or it can just be to get the word out about your toy store. And that's how you make money. And there are hundreds of ways, whether it be, I think Shay kind of referenced it earlier, but whether it be them on Fiverr or whether it be them learning to make games or working for an amazing company. Here locally, we have a company called Wonderworks Studios. But there are so many jobs just in Roblox, and that doesn't factor in all the graphic design, digital creation, the things you're doing, James, that you're doing for a living. And I know I'm not allowed to say this, especially as a former public school teacher. College is not for everyone. And if you can teach these kids some of these skills at an early age and get them to figure out whether they love it or not, they can go to a 1-year program or a 2-year program and learn what they need and make way more money than public school teacher Freddie did, and love what they do. So, yeah, the amount of different kind of entrepreneurial things that they can learn and just skills that they can use going forward is limitless in gaming and esports and the metaverse and Web3 and everything else.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Jennifer, did you want to talk about go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, we started actually when Dylan was 15, he actually was playing online, right? He was playing online, traveling, making money. And at that point, when you make so much money, you have to obviously do taxes. He was making too much money doing tournaments. So for gaming, we actually opened him a gaming company, right? So at that age, we opened a gaming company. He had started learning that, hey, I have a gaming company now. It's you know what I mean? And what he could actually buy under his gaming company. And that's when you start to learn about business, right? And even in high school, they don't even learn those kind of things. It's kind of funny. You come out of high school, you don't even know how to balance checking or, just, hey, I got a debit card. I can, buy whatever I want. There's money on this card. It doesn't work like that. But that's how I feel like they come out of high school. But, at that point, we just opened them a gaming company. And at that point, that's how it sailed. You know what I mean? You started learning that, this is my business and I, want to put my money in my business. And so all of his tournament winnings went into his business and started like that. And all the way through the pro, up until the last few years, they 1099'd him, you know what I mean? So everything, he had to do through his business. So, but like Freddie said, not everything, there's only 1% of gamers that go pro, right? I mean, it's everybody wants to be a pro, but but you don't have to be a pro to make money, right? I mean, we have, people that do Twitch, Facebook gaming, we have YouTubers, you're just making videos of your gameplay, right? When you're playing, just videos of gameplay, post it. I mean, people are good enough just showing how they play the game. I mean, there's so many ways that you can just make games and not have to actually be a pro. Play the game and you can make money, right? Just viewers, right? And then not only that, like Freddie said, like there's so many jobs out there that you can get without actually being the pro. I mean, in these orgs, there's so many jobs. There's marketing, HR. I mean, they have accounting. I mean, even just accounting. I mean, any of those jobs, all these orgs need so many people, right? And so obviously you can still play and you can still do all those things. They have video game testers. They have all kinds of things. So video games can take you a lot of places that you just don't have to be a pro. You know what I mean? So a lot of parents are like, oh, once, he's not going to be pro, what's the point? But there's a lot of different avenues it can take you. So
I promise I didn't tee up any of these questions for the segues that I'm about to bring in, but you all have done an amazing job so far of teeing me up for the next thing I want to talk about. One thing that is incredibly important to my company, Encore, was the fact that the people who are interested in esports are also the people that we want to have at an AV technology company. So my company decided to join ESTA as a recruiting member. Basically, that was the most important thing to them. Of course, we do. You may be aware of my company or you may not, but we do some of the largest tournaments and conventions in the world year after year after year. And you probably have never heard of us, but we desperately need people. We have hired over 1,600 people just since the start of this year because we're in the live event space. And esports is that thing that will start to drive, I feel, more live and in-person events. In fact, we talked a little bit about how gaming happens on live and in basements and things like that. But one thing I found was really fascinating was that in between 2019 and 2020, esports as an industry took a step backwards. And that was because there were about 1,100 fewer live tournaments than in the past. Having pro gamer having gamers as your children, Jennifer and Shay, can you tell me a little bit about like what it's like to have both online and in-person kind of experience as a parent of an esport person and what that means as far as your responsibility? We can start with Shay this time.
Yeah, that was actually the thing that I think most parents don't understand here. When their child goes into their bedroom to play a video game, they still think they're playing alone. they don't realize how socially connected this world is. And to me, that was really learning a modern way of communicating, which is so valuable. And that leads into what you were alluding to before, is that people are recruiting here. Not only are colleges actively recruiting people in these gaming spaces, but so are businesses. And if you look at the way modern businesses are going, Freddie keeps alluding to this, we've all found ourselves in the Web3 world. I feel really blessed that I got to the Web3 world early because I'm with the gamers, and the gamers were the first ones that really started paying attention to what was going on here. And they understand the technology and they want to be involved. So you look at how, the leading edge of jobs here and understanding it. And a lot of these kids, like one of the best things we ever did as a company for Cope was we hired teenagers to do our social media. They get it. They know how to communicate on, all of these social networks. And every tweet we do, we run it by somebody under the age of 19 before we send it. Because they are the ones that I really see as the leaders in this space.
And Jennifer, how did the in-person versus the online versions of esports happen in your family?
Obviously, the in-person is a game changer for people. I think once a parent sees the in-person, game changing, I think changes a parent's view 110%.
Yes.
Online when they're in their rooms or whatever, if they can stream it, I think, if they can even put on Twitch and they have 2 people watching, including a parent, I think a parent feels more involved. Even, my kid's playing, like last night he was streaming and he's in Cali. I don't get to see him, but I get to watch his face on a stream. I mean, it makes me feel like he's there, right? So even if he was in his room or wherever he is, but when a parent goes to a LAN event, they're sold. And I don't care what game it is. I don't care, how old they are sold. I went to a high school recruiting event for colleges, and there were parents that walked in, and I was there, and they were like, the parents like, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why they're doing this. They want to play in college. I mean, like they were like really like negative. And I'm like, let's just watch. Have you ever watched them play? Well, no, they're in their room. They were there. They watched. I'm like, sit here, watch them. Look how excited they got. And they were excited. By the end of the weekend, they were taking pictures and videotaping, and they were cheering, and they had no clue what they were cheering for. But when they cheered, everybody cheered, they cheered, and their perspective on it was different because the electricity in the room and everybody's involvement, and you see how many people are there, and you know what I mean, it's a whole different, it's like a sporting event, and it's like going to a football game. And so I think when you see that in person, it's hard not to, you can't be the person sitting in the corner, because you would be the person standing out. Like, you know what I mean? So I think I always say you get a person to a LAN event, and even if they don't have a kid, hey, come on, let's watch. They'll never look back.
That is so great. I use a ton of analogies from traditional sports in my sales in general, because we sell hybrid events these days, right? Like, so almost every event you go to these days will have an online component. And most people are like, I see this as like kind of a second class, third party, like we're doing this only because we have to kind of thing. But in reality, we have been going to hybrid events, and we have been watching live events streamed since we were able to put anything on TV, right? Any live sporting event. In fact, I found 1911, I think, was the first time that there were ever a live broadcast of an event that was then shown to somebody. It was just markers on a page where people were watching the Kansas Missouri football game being told over the radio, and then somebody would literally go there and move a person around. But that was a live streamed sporting event 110 years ago. Was the first time this came around. So we've been doing this a lot, and I don't think parents understand that. James O'Hagan in the comments has had a ton of great points about Scholastic and pro esports. And Freddie, I think this one would be good for you. What can we do as parents to help our schools understand that this is not a fad, that this is just as important as having a kickball class after school or something like that?
Well, I think a couple of things, and I want to quickly piggyback off of what Shay said a second ago. Yes, the kids, this is how they socialize in many respects. And so I think kind of per this conversation and the title, it's really important, parents. You need to know who they're talking to. You need to have set ground rules with them. You need to have had discussions, serious and otherwise, with them about who and how and what to communicate online. It's hugely important. To your question, I think really it's helping administrators understand, and district administrators, but school administrators understand just the benefits that this can have. I think if you're going into a new school that doesn't understand this and pitching them on, you should have an esports team, and this is why, I think you're kind of missing the big picture. Because I think to have this lab created, to have this hardware brought in, and to have it be able to be used throughout the day and throughout the year for disadvantaged kids as a benefit to stay in school and continue to work hard, as a place to go possibly when going home isn't any fun, I think is really key, and is something special that we offer that your football team doesn't, that your high school basketball team doesn't. And so I think that can get lost. And I think it's an opportunity missed to help some really deserving kids that we can reach through gaming. As far as the other, I think it's important, just here are the facts. Here locally, Grapevine, Collettville, or Allen win state championships all the time. You want to do that? I have,
the state championships are incredibly important in Texas. So no matter what sport it is.
Exactly. And so going to them and saying, here's the investment. Here's what I think we can get donated. Here are the community partners that I think we can have. And let's do this. Plus the opportunity to help other kids, I think is an easy sell.
Is COPE a place, and this was just a question that I saw pop up, Shay, is COPE a place where parents can find out about high school recruiting events or things like that, where there are events for students?
Yes, it is. That's exactly what we want to highlight, is making that more accessible to parents. And then segueing on to what James said, very important points. And this is part of the reason, why we created COPE, is that yes, most of the content that we've got right now is going out on Twitch and LinkedIn and Twitter, and parents are not there. Now, part of what we're trying to do is teach parents that they need to be there. They need to be on Discord, and they need to be on Twitch. And there's good to that. I mean, they watch football and baseball on TV. Most of these parents do not think watching gaming is going to be exciting. But if anybody watched the gaming online this weekend, whether it was FNCS, which was the most amazing production, or the COD events, it's just as exciting as any other sport, with the personal behind the scenes stories of the players and their backgrounds, where they're going to college. I mean, it's just amazing. But on to his point, we've got to reach parents where they are. And that's been the hardest thing here. They are on Facebook. COPE is trying to build our presence on Facebook right now, because that's where the parents are. And there's a lot of great parent groups out there that I want to reach. Other key points that he's talking about here, partnering with local governments and libraries. That didn't actually, I didn't even consider that in the beginning. We were really thinking about community centers that were starting leagues, or we were thinking about schools. But we've actually had libraries reach out to us. A couple of them have amazing programs. And then local government. I think James is completely right. I think this really has to start at that level. And those conversations are what I find the most exciting right now. And thinking about that, not just for your city, not just for economic development, but the development of your people. Through Esports Trade Association, a few of us, and James, I guess you had the honor of this last week as well, we got to meet with the mayor of Chicago, both in Dallas and Austin. And that was such an exciting conversation to me, to see how excited her team was thinking about this, not just from an economic standpoint, but also getting to realize that this is an investment in kids. Especially those inner city kids that may not have access to these type of jobs. And it really, speaks volumes that they got it, and they are continuing those conversations with us about how to reach those kids. And another point, James makes, is about having this in multiple languages. I totally agree. And I find that the parents that really push back the most on gaming are the ones with the highest expectation for their kids. And that's often first generation Americans, if we're talking about the US, because, they work so hard to be here and to have their kids in an American education system. And they don't understand that this is actually a great path for them to learn. And I think we need to be better about communicating that value.
Thank you, Shay. Those are exceptional points. And I just want to point out that James she's referring to is the one in the comments making all these insightful comments, not me by any stretch. So James O'Hagan in the comments is doing all this great suggestions and things like that. And these are people, as you're in these comments, please connect with one another, because the conversations that I've had from participating in this and then continuing it with other people who are watching as opposed to the panelists have been some of the most enlightening I've had since joining ESTA. So please continue the discussion amongst yourselves down there. Certainly, if you have questions for the group, we're going to try and continue this for another 20 minutes or so. So if you have specific questions about you or as a parent or maybe even as a student, we'd love to hear those as well. Jennifer, I wanted to ask you again, because your son is a top 100 in the US. Is that correct, COD player? Is that correct? How, to me, that is as unique as being one of the best football players, one of the who are getting NIL deals. If you're familiar with college sports these days, for name, image, likeness, where they can earn tens of thousands or even millions of dollars for some exceptional players. It feels like they're just now coming into that. When we talk about amateur players before they become pros, are there rules or regulations or anything like that about being an amateur pro player, quote unquote?
Rules as in what?
As in, so as an amateur traditional sports player, you can't have an agent. You can't.
No, there is no rules. Like there's no rules. You can't have any of those things. I mean, I wouldn't suggest obviously that until you have, until you have a reason to do that, right? Because if you're paying someone, you have to have a reason for them, to pay someone. I mean, if they're getting you deals, or then obviously there's a reason. But when you're in the amateur, no, I mean, there's no rules. I would just say that the biggest thing is contracts. Right. And I saw James in the comments say something about contracts. I wouldn't lock yourself into a contract until and I would ask. Obviously, have someone look at it, and I don't care how old you are, or I don't care how stubborn-headed your teenager is. Please look at that contract. I mean, even if it's not a lot of money and you don't think it's a big deal, please look at it. You don't know what the fine print, like James said in the comments, you don't know, what it's locking you into, because what if it says, hey, you can't be traded. Hey, we have to pay a lot of money for you. I mean, these kids think it's just so exciting to be recruited and to be, hey, I'm going to be with this team name and they're going to give me a jersey. Like, oh, I'm going to get a jersey and I'm going to be able to play on an amateur team. But then all of a sudden, if you're stuck, then, and the teenagers think they don't want their parents involved, right? I'm a big boy now. I can, this guy's offering me this, money and a jersey. I don't need my parents to know that I know what I'm doing. And it happens to everyone. And, we went through an issue even with a pro team that was before we got franchised, and we had an issue, and people know the issue, but I don't need to go into details, but we had to get attorneys we had to deal with Activision Blizzard to help us get out of. So, I mean, there's always someone always trying to throw something in there. So even teenagers always think they know better than their parents. And doesn't matter if it's $100, doesn't matter if it's $100,000, have somebody look at it. And I would tell all amateur players, all young players, I mean, kids are getting signed 13 years old, 12 years old. And just make sure you do the right thing and get somebody to look at those things.
We were part of the Esports Business Symposium through Morgan Stanley last week, and one of the things they talked about there was contracts and these larger organizations, and how this is so different than your stick and ball sports, because there's an intellectual property that is owned by somebody else, which is what you're playing. This is not anybody can go out and start a football tournament because nobody owns football, but you can't do these other things. So as a parent who's considering getting involved in this world, there are very much things that you would never have thought about if you were entering into a football, if you had a great little football player or something like that. And there are no organizations, although organizations like NACE and COPE are trying to help as much as possible. There is no overarching association, like the National
Correct.
Collegiate Athletic Association, who's going to tell you exactly what the rules are before you get to
Right,
do
right. And everyone's different. Every contract's different, right? So, you
Sure.
know, you can get a contract with someone and they already have you locked into a sponsor and maybe you didn't want that one, or you want to have your own and you can't because of the fine print in your contract, right? So you just really need to know what you're getting into. And if that's what you want, that's fine. But have someone look over your stuff because, you know, you don't want to get stuck where you can't make more money, right?
Mhm.
Or you can't, you know what I mean? So you want to make sure it's the best deal for you so that you can continue to grow your brand. And that's what it is growing your brand, you know, as a person, you know what I mean? So as you go up through the ranks, and even if you never become pro, you want to grow your brand online, you
Mhm.
know, on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube, whatever platform you decide to go with, or all of them, you want to grow your brand, and you want to be able to do that without being locked into a goofy contract, you know.
Well, trade associations are a great way to connect with people who can help you navigate those sort of things. So if you're interested, or if you have something like that and you'd like to connect with people who are also investing in themselves as part of being esports, the Esports Trade Association is a great organization to be part of. And certainly organizations like COPE, where people are there to help because they want to help, are even better for reaching out to people who are like you, not just, and where they go for resources.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wrote this question down. We talked about it a little bit, but many parents aren't familiar with esports and think of gaming as a solitary, introverted hobby. My daughters are homeschooled. So why would I want my homeschool students doing esports this summer? Freddie, there's a question for you. Why would I want my kids doing esports this summer instead of an outdoor activity with a bunch of in-person social interaction? And this is not my question to you, but this is a question a person who doesn't know what I know might ask you.
Okay, and this, yeah, very passionate about this answer. So, and I think this goes to Catherine's question in the chat. Okay, I don't want anyone's kid to play video games for 10 hours a day. I would argue that if that's happening, that's not healthy. And you know, you do you, parents, but I don't want your kid playing 10 hours of video games a day. I want them running around, riding their bike, playing grab butt, playing sports, doing whatever, but they're gaming anyway. So let's do it in a healthy, fun, competitive environment that's social and teach them all these great skills we're talking about. And especially for those kids. Shay mentioned it earlier, and it kind of struck me because I've gotten this phone call from parents. Hey, my kid doesn't like sports. They don't play an instrument. I need them to find their people. They love tech. They love video games. Are there people there? Yes, send them to Techie Factory. So just giving these kids an opportunity to find their group, to learn these great things about that we learn from traditional sports, or playing an instrument, or acting, or singing, or art, or whatever, is so hugely important. And there are more and more of these kids every day that are this Gen Alpha group that are, as Shade so aptly put it, kind of the Web3 generation, that we're going to see more of these kids. And let's find a supportive, healthy activity that they love, that they can do and learn these great skills from. It's so important. Not every kid wants to play sports exclusively. There are some that do, and that's great. Don't play video games. That's fine, but they are anyway. So let's make sure they're in a platform where they're not no one's trying to fly them to North Carolina, or teach them all manner of toxically yucky bad words. Let's put them in a healthy, safe environment, and then also have them ride their bike and play it.
Did I hear you're actually developing a safe gaming app for kids, Freddie?
We are. We're right now. It's called eTourney, where we're changing it, but when they log in, we use facial recognition and one partner who verifies that they're kids. They actually take a picture with their parent next to them. So we verify that it's only kids on there. When they log in to play, it's just kids. They use, just like your banking app, they use AI to take a picture. We've got a Minecraft server that's only for kids. It's actually opening next week. And I need to talk to Jennifer about, because I need her kiddo to test it out.
Okay.
But yeah, we're building that because there needs to be a place for parents like me who have an 8-year-old girl who feel comfortable, a place for their kids to go on and play and be competitive and be social, and we don't have to worry about it.
You know, my daughters are
Yeah.
10 and 12, and we play together. So the three of us will play Valorant together, which is a first-person shooter that's a team game. They have given me a ton of controls for me to remove all the things that I am uncomfortable with. Blood, corpses, mature content, chat filtering. All those things are options in these games. And then when we get on there as a team, I make sure that whoever we're in chat with, I don't ever tell them I've got kids so that they don't have to change who they are. But if they seem like the kind of people who are going to be okay with paying a 10 and 12-year-old, I will let them know, and I'll let my daughters turn on their comms. They still don't get to talk, but they can listen. And I'm not letting them make friends yet because I'm not comfortable with that. But those are the steps that I have to go through, Freddie, to make sure that my two kids can play one game one time.
Yes, and I want to answer that, and then James's point really quick. So to your point, so imagine that it's just 12. Well, and so it stops at 13 as far as competitive gaming and the social bit, but then older kids can be on there too, but they don't get to be in the chat. And so imagine if there's this thing that you don't have to worry about, because not only do we have AI verifying that it's kids, we have a different vendor that does AI that's moderating chat. And if you're being a dunghole, then you're out. Then you're on timeout. Sorry. And so so yes, so I look forward to bringing this to your girls. To James's point, everything that we're doing is all COPPA and GDPR compliant. I don't want your data. We don't want to be a big data company. All we want to do is give your kids a safe place to play, and we'll have their parents' address, so if they win something, we can send it to them. But yeah, whether it's our app or esports in general, that's another important topic. You want to make sure that things are, that your kid's data is safe, that it's COPPA compliant, that it's, all these different kind of third-party orgs that are verifying and testing and doing all this. You want to make sure that wherever your kids are compliant.
I think.
Oh, sorry. Please go ahead, Jennifer.
I think, like you had said before, though, hey, my kids aren't sporty or whatever. I have that, like I said, my older ones play sports, my younger one doesn't. And the outlet of video games for him is that it makes him feel good about himself. You know what I mean? When he plays and talks to other kids and he has friends from that and he feels like they're friends, he feels good about himself, instead of when he's at school and he can't throw a football and he can't make a basketball layup, you know what I mean? And people make, you know what I mean? Like, he's not that sporty guy. When he comes home, he's good at tech stuff. His mind thinks like that. He can play roadblocks. He can do those things. And he's really good at that. But, obviously those kids at school don't see that. So when he comes home, he gets on there and he gets on, with other kids, and those are his friends. And so he feels good about himself. And I think sometimes that's a huge part of gaming too, because those are his people. Like you said, you have to find your people, and that's his people. And I think that's a huge part for kids too, right? Because not every kid is going to be athletic, and those kids do fall through the cracks, and kids are getting depressed or whatever. And I think that's where gaming does have a part in that, where they can actually feel needed, feel like they have a place to go.
Anonymity is such a double-edged sword when it comes to that kind of stuff too, Jennifer. And Catherine here has a great point that some of the saltiest language is coming from people who are way too young to know most of these words, but feel empowered to say it because of how anonymous they are. Freddie, it sounds like you're trying to address that a little bit with, making sure you have a place that, even if you are anonymous, you're a group of people that we can count on as being a safe group of people. And safety, of course, as a parent is paramount to me. That is why I don't allow them to have chat on. That is why even Roblox and I don't allow them to make friends yet. They're just too young for that sort of thing. What would you say, Shay, to a parent like me who's very concerned about that part of it? I don't want my kids getting involved with gaming because I've heard so many bad stories about how meeting people online has turned into something that is wildly inappropriate.
Yeah, and that actually brings me back to the conversations I see in the chat from Bradley of talking about the incredible, things that these real world skills that gaming brings, and really educating parents on that. And I see, and what James is saying about the esports organizations not being there teaching parents and educators about the value. And that is so true, because right now, most parents, they don't understand the space. They only see the negative in the press. They worry about who their kids are talking to. And we've really got to get in there and show them this value and show them how to engage. I mean, one of the reasons that the secret reasons we formed COPE is to get away from that Lord of the Flies mentality. We realized that the kids actually wanted us there. I first thought they were going to see us as a nanny organization and push back. We found the opposite. They were thrilled to have us as part of a community of being adults who were getting excited about their achievements and were cheering them on when they did something great. And kids want them there. But if you talk to a kid, they'll just tell you, oh, my mom hates gaming. She doesn't want anything to do with this. And I'm like, have you really shown her what you're doing? Have you actually invited her into your room and shown her? And so that's a big thing that we tell them. We tell the kids is really show them what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Show them what you love about it. Introduce them to your friends online. Don't be scared of doing that. And on the same thing with parents, I mean, you're not going to send your kid over to somebody's house for a 3-hour play date if you don't know the parents or you don't know them. It's the same online. You know, when your kids are younger, you know, you need to know who they're interacting with. You need to barge in there. And parents will say, oh, no, I can't go in there. That's their private space. No, it's not. It is just another playground, and you need to jump in and you need to know what they're doing. And yes, COPE will help you do that. But we also are a group that's saying, don't just cut it off. A lot of parents say, oh, this is bad. It's a vice. I'm just going to limit their interaction here. That's not the answer either. These kids are smart. They're going to figure out how to do what they want to do, whether you're involved or not. Mm-hmm. And we know they're going to get the most out of it if you are involved. Mm-hmm. So my message to esports companies is exactly what James O'Hagan said here, is the esports companies are still marketing only to the gamer. And they're frustrated. Some of them are frustrated that we're not getting the respect that we need, you know, globally, just like football or, you know, anything else. Until we show the parents the value here, that's not going to happen. You've got to market this to the parents with the benefits as well as to the kid that wants to have fun.
What a fantastic wrap up. Thank you so much for that one, Shay. That was great. I was going to ask each of you to give a wrap up and kind of how you would end it, but it looks like you have done a fantastic job on yours. So I'd like to give the same opportunity to Jennifer and Freddie really quickly with the limited amount of time we had left, and then just make a few announcements as we continue. Again, this conversation is amazing. And as a parent, there's so much more I want to talk to these three people about so that I can get this information. I love analogies. I remember Freddie talking about building a virtual store of a real store, and it reminded me of that scene from a movie where they were at an eBay store where they had all the stuff they were going to put on eBay in the brick and mortar store, but they couldn't buy it at the brick and mortar store. Mm-hmm. So it's almost exactly the opposite direction. It's taking a brick and mortar store and putting it online. I thought that one was super awesome. So that was one thing I wanted to mention as far as an analogy. Just another thing to get parents to understand that there are real world analogs to what we're doing online. And not only can our kids learn stuff from this, but they can apply it to future jobs. Even extroverts play video games. They're shoutcasters. Yeah, of course you're in your room, but you are talking to an audience of tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of people. And that takes an extrovert. So it doesn't matter if your kid's not an introvert, basement dweller. Gaming and esports could be the spot for them. So Jennifer, I could real quickly, you've got so much going on. Just share what you're doing and where people might find you as well.
Yeah, I have obviously an online coffee company. So it's just online, so you can always order online, regaincoffee.com. But I also am working with Aftershock Media Group. It's a talent agency. I help bring brands to talent to help get them, you know, more known in the scene, and get brands out there to help the talent. So I just wanted to address, I see Brad in the comments, he kind of said the same thing that I did, like, this is an outlet for kids that don't play sports. And then he also said that when his kid finally beat him at the Madden game. And that's kind of what happened with Dylan, to be honest. You know, like, I want to say maybe like at 6 or something, he beat my husband at a game. And then my husband would put him on the headphones, say, you can't talk and play for me. So Dylan would be beating people and they would think it was my husband, and my husband's like, I can't beat this guy, can you go beat him for me? And so he would help my husband rank up on games because he was better than my husband, but he couldn't talk on the comms. So like you had said, he couldn't talk on the comms, but he could go and play for him. So it was kind of funny back in the day. So but yeah, I agree with a lot of those things that you know, if you're not a sporty person, it gives you an outlet, but if you are a sporty person, it helps skill building. You know what I mean? There's a lot of different you know, a lot of different avenues, you know, like you said, even casters, announcers. When I tell people that Dylan plays video games, obviously they're, you know, like interested, appalled, whatever you want to call it. Then I tell them that they have casters and announcers and they stream it. And, you know, I mean, there's so many different things that people are like, you know, wowed by. So there's just so many things out there that, you know, we just need to get out to parents and to people. So.
And where can they find your coffee company or reach you about Aftershock?
Regaincoffee.com. And then Aftershock is Jennifer Aftershock Media Group.com.
Very cool. Freddie, I'll let you jump in here. And I didn't give you a chance to tell them where to find you, Shay, so you can jump in there at the end.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mom Envoy on Twitter. Sorry,
There
I
you
should
go.
probably say it. Mom Envoy on Twitter. I probably should say that.
Go ahead, Freddie.
James, I think the movie you were talking about was Rush Hour 2. I think it's in Rush Hour 2, but I'm not totally sure. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's pretty good. Yeah. So, you know, I think, first of all, I would love to do this for another like 2 hours. And I would love to invite, because I think the majority of our audience probably already gets it. And so I wish that we could talk to all those parents that don't necessarily. You know, I think moderation. It's all about moderation. Everything in life is all about moderation. Basketball is great. If you're playing at 3 a.m. at the park across the street with your buddies, it's not healthy. It's not, you shouldn't be playing basketball at 3 a.m. If you're, you know, playing golf with your friends as a kid and gambling or whatever, that's not healthy. So it's all about moderation. It's all about doing it right. And I think that it is incumbent upon us, the people in this room, the people in ESTA, to make sure that, especially for the younger kids, but even through high school, that we are collectively doing it the right way, that our messaging to parents, and not in a salesman way. Yes, I would love my businesses to be successful. I am more focused on us getting the message out, because this is going to happen with or without us. And so why not lend a voice to the people that know what's going on? I mean, if these two ladies say it, I take it as fact. And so I think learning from people like them and you is so hugely important. And then just, website, LinkedIn, Freddie, Techie Factory, Eternity, reach out. I'm always happy to help if you have questions.
My daughters will be attending his esports, graphic design, and streaming class in July. So if you want to meet out there, this is at the Belong Gaming Arena at the Grapevine Mills Mall here in Dallas. An amazing program, which I was super excited to share with a bunch of people. You all should too. And go ahead, Shay, if you want to finish out the panelist thank you salutation. Appreciate it.
And for any parents, educators, anybody in chat, please send them to cope.gg. That's our website. We actually just went live with our new version of the website that's more interactive and makes it a lot easier to find some of these great resources we're talking about. Or just reach out to us. We can help you start this journey on navigating this. And you can also find me on Twitter, Shaymon, or here on LinkedIn.
Very cool. Well, real quickly, let me just give some final ESTA announcements. Please visit our event calendar. As you can see up here, it is at members.esportsta.org/events. Of course, we have our Esports Next conference coming up in Chicago from August 22nd to the 23rd. I will be there helping to produce it. I am thrilled about going back to this event. The people there were some of the, it would have been like George Steinbrenner going to the first MLB convention. Like, it was just an amazing time to be there. And I know that makes sense to traditional sports people, but we all get it. So, and then the Perfecting Your Pitch workshop, that is something that we're super excited about. The elevator pitch competition is something that will be at the Esports Next event, where people are welcome to pitch their ideas for investment to true investment companies. And I personally have made some investments and ideas that I've heard at this thing. So it's an amazing time. The elevator pitch class can help you perfect that pitch. And with all of that, I'd like to say thank you very much. Please go to esportsta.org to learn more, or visit us on any of the social channels. Thank you so much, Shay. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I know Freddie had to drop off quickly. Really appreciate your time. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.